Hey YouTube, First Alert Meteorologist John Birchfield here. This is another edition of Weather Hangout Kids Edition. We're going to be talking tornadoes today. Everything from how they form, how big are they, how fast are they, how common are they around here. But I just sent out that push notification. You may have gotten it on your phone. Leave your comments down below. We've got Zeddy Zavarick. Hey there kids, hope you're having a good one. This is definitely a great way to make homeschooling a little bit more fun. I know a lot of you probably completing those lesson plans from home. Hopefully we can incorporate a bit of weather into that. So today we're going to be talking tornadoes. I want to see your comments though. Where are you joining us from? What kind of weather is your favorite type of weather? In particular today we'll be talking about tornadoes, even though we're forecasting snow. So kind of hard to believe this is April weather, but today's edition is going to be focused on tornadoes. Bring the kids too. This is definitely a family fun sort of activity. We're going to be talking about how tornadoes form, how big are they, how fast are they, how common are they, and I even got a little tornado demonstration. I'm going to give you a little preview of that, but I've got my glow-in-the-dark tornado machine today. That's something that I love bringing along on those elementary school visits, but unfortunately can't really do those in person now, so I'm going to bring the tornado to your home. So I'm seeing a few more of your comments. I want to give you a little preview of the tornado machine that's going to be demonstrated later. So I'm going to just put this up in front of the camera. We've got Rachel tuning in. Kaylin, I hope I pronounced that right. Hopefully you can see the little glow-in-the-dark tornado that I just put up there in front of the screen. But we'll be talking about that in just a bit and doing some fun little hands-on demonstrations. Andy says snow. Yes, we are forecasting snow, but today's hangout's going to be talking about tornadoes. Melissa, thanks for Caden and Gavin for tuning in from Bowling Green. Shout out to Caden and Gavin. Hope your school from home is going well so far. Jill's watching in Temperance. Hey Jill, hope you're having a good one so far. Melissa, hello, thanks for joining us. So we've got a question about grapple. That's what we saw the other week, those sort of little ice pellets that fall from the sky. But we're going to be talking about tornadoes today. So I'm really excited to see all these comments coming through. Of course, we promoted these Weather Hangout Kids editions on our Facebook page, but we are live here on YouTube, so definitely give us a subscribe. We're going to be talking about tornado safe places, and hopefully you were able to see the tornado machine that I just put up on the screen just a second ago. We got a comment that says, waiting for the snow. Yes, there is snow in the forecast for tomorrow if you've been tuning in. A First Alert day, but we want to give a special shout out to all the kids joining us right now. I know it's been a little bit of a difference switching from going in person to school to doing your schoolwork from home, but hopefully we can talk tornadoes and have a little fun with it. So I want to see if I can pull up my full screen webcam here and show you a little tornado demonstration. So I oftentimes bring with me my handy dandy tornado machine on some of my elementary school visits. I'm not sure if you can see it right now. Oh, Ryan, you're too nice. He says, John rocks. Ryan rocks too. Thanks for the comment. So I know there's just a tiny bit of a delay between when I show something on the video and when it actually appears, but I've got my tornado machine right here. Hopefully you can see it. If you can see it, leave your comments down below. Just switch to the full screen webcam there. And this is something I love bringing with me on elementary school visits. It's not only a little tornado demonstration, but it also glows in the dark and sort of switches colors. So if you're a kid and you're commenting here on YouTube, what color do you want to see? We've got it at orange right now. It actually can switch into red and all sorts of colors. I can turn it on blue, purple, pink, you name it. Of course, you know, actual tornadoes are not colorful like this, but I think it's a fun little demonstration. So I'm seeing some of your comments come on through, especially the kids. Don't be afraid to leave those comments. I'm going to try to answer them as best as possible. So Nyla says, I love watching tornadoes, but when it actually happens, I get so scared. You know, Nyla, we are here as the First Alert Weather Team to keep you safe, keep you informed, keep you updated. I understand that they can be a little bit scary, but if you're prepared for a tornado, nothing to be afraid of. And we'll talk about your tornado safe spot in just a bit. All right, I'm going to turn off the tornado machine. I don't want to accidentally spill it on my laptop or something, but we'll get rid of the full screen webcam so you don't have to see my face so big there. But we're going to be talking about tornadoes. So I'm going to just read through a few more of your comments, and we are going to get going here with our live weather hangout. So Katerina sees the tornado machine. I think it's pretty cool. So we got people requesting green, red, green, red. Lots of green and red. We got a blue there, though. I see your comment there for blue. So we'll be getting the tornado machine up and running again in just a bit. But we're going to talk about your tornado safe place. So I normally ask, like, raise your hand if you know where your tornado safe spot is, but I can't see your hands raised. So if you comment down on the comments, I've got the comments going here on my YouTube screen Do you know where your tornado safe space is? Now, I know a lot of times tornadoes can be awfully scary, but if you know where your tornado safe space is, it's really not so scary. If you take precautions, if you plan ahead of time, we can deal with the severe weather that strikes our area together. So, do you know where your tornado safe spot is? We'll get back to the tornado machine in just a second, and there's a lot of comments coming on through. Really excited to see so many folks, especially those kids tuning in from wherever you are tuning in today. So, really excited to see such a big audience here, but we're going to be talking about tornado safe spaces. So, yeah, that would be agonizing to replace my computer. I hate to say it, but I used to have this little tornado in a bottle machine, and it did spill on one of my computers. So I learned from my mistakes. I'm going to make sure I set the tornado machine well off in the distance so I don't have to make that mistake twice. So we got hands raised. Glad you know where your tornado safe spot is. So I hope this diagram sort of helps explain where's a good place to be during a tornado and where's a bad place. So we will send you from your phone, if you have that First Alert Weather app, we'll send you notifications when there's a severe thunderstorm warning, when there's a tornado warning, and we'll let you know when you need to take shelter. But when we do tell you to take shelter, when we do tell you there is a tornado warning, you got to get to that safe spot. So Krista says basement, Andy says basement, ding, 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 both of those correct answers. Now, I know a lot of folks don't have a basement, and that includes me. I live in an apartment where I don't have access to a basement or an underground area. So does anyone know where a good spot to be during a tornado warning would be? Let's just say you don't have a basement. I'm going to wait a couple minutes or a couple seconds for some of those comments to come on through, but basement's definitely a good spot. Storm shelters, yeah, Zeddy commented storm shelters. Those are a little bit more common down south towards Tornado Alley where they get more tornadoes. But, I don't hear about too many storm shelters up in Ohio because tornadoes just aren't as common up here. And actually, in a couple of minutes, we're going to talk about just how frequent tornadoes are, how many we get, and where are sort of the tornado hotspots where most of those tornadoes happen. So Caitlin's asked, does it matter if there are tiny windows in your basement? So to answer that question, not so much. You want to get away from windows as best as possible, but basement's still going to be your best bet. If you think about it, tornadoes are going along on flat land. I got my tornado machine right here. So the tornado's coming through on the ground level. Now, if you're below ground, if you're in that basement below ground level, you're going to be sort of immune to the biggest effects of the tornado because you're underneath its level. So we'll get that tornado machine up and running again in just a second. But first of all, just want to cover tornado safe space. So we got a comment that says no windows. That's definitely good advice. I know some folks in their basement, they do have tiny windows. I think the basement's still a great spot to go during a tornado warning. You're just going to want to go away from those windows. Windowless bathrooms, definitely a great spot. Dawn commented that. Jenny comments bathroom in a bathtub. Yep, if you don't have a basement, your bathroom is definitely a good spot to go during a tornado warning. If you can crouch down in that bathtub, that'll give you a little extra shelter and a little extra protection. So someone like myself, I don't have a basement in my residence, so I would probably go to the bathroom. Other than the bathroom, an interior closet's a good spot to go to. And I'd encourage you, maybe when this YouTube video is done with your kids, go around the house and show them where that tornado safe spot is. It's good for the kids to know as well, and it's a sort of interactive way to help them talk about tornado safety. So as far as the tornado safe spot goes, basement's obviously a great spot to go. If you don't have a basement, try to go to your bathroom away from windows and doors. Interior closet's a great spot to go. So talk about this with the kids, maybe after the YouTube video. Go in your house or your apartment, find that tornado safe spot, just so you know and you can plan ahead. So I'm going to check through a few more of your comments. Definitely look at this diagram. Do you know your tornado safe place? So Dawn got it right, windowless bathroom. Evan says a room with no windows so the glass doesn't hurt you. Yeah, Evan, that is a good point as well. And the glass can definitely be a threat because a lot of times in thunderstorms, we get the strong winds, we get hail, we get down trees that can even knock through your windows. So you do want to be away from windows. Even during a strong thunderstorm, I'd recommend getting away from those windows. A week ago, we saw some pretty big hailstones that are right about the size of golf balls. And if you think about a golf ball size hail coming through the window, yeah, I would definitely recommend being away from windows, away from doors, preferably in that basement. So we started off talking about tornado safe place. We're going to jump into how common are tornadoes around here. So I know this slide kind of gives it away, but where do you think most tornadoes in the United States occur? I'm going to wait a couple seconds for your comments to come on through. This is a great one for the kids too. Where do you think Tornado Alley is? Where do you think most of the tornadoes in the United States happen? Are they more common in Ohio, or are they more common in Texas? Are they more common in Michigan, or are they more common out in Kansas? Just let me know down in the comments. I'm excited to see so many of these comments coming on through. I'm going to get a sip of water, though, because I'm starting to lose my voice just a little bit. You know, Andy, we are going to show that forecast on the news, but this focus is tornadoes. This is our Weather Hangout Kids edition, so we will talk about tornadoes here. You can, of course, stay tuned to that first alert forecast, because we are forecasting snow tomorrow, no severe weather of any kind. All right, so we're going to talk about how common tornadoes are. Before we get into that, though, just going to read through a few more of your comments. So Melissa asked, why would you go in a closet? So Melissa, one of the reasons I recommend closets for folks who don't have basements is closets generally don't have windows. At least from my experience, most of my closets have not had windows. So usually the closets are more on the inside interior of the house and they are away from windows. So I would say closet's a pretty good place to be. Bathroom, not a bad place, but basement, of course, is your number one priority. All right, so we are talking about how common tornadoes are. I'm going to sort of segue into this part of our weather talk. So we've got folks saying Oklahoma is where a lot of tornadoes happen, the Plains. Robert, tell Connor he's right. Yeah, Kansas is a place where a lot of tornadoes occur. They definitely see more tornadoes out west, down to the south. Certainly a lot more than we see here. I know a lot of you who were following the national news and the national weather news. Unfortunately, last weekend was a very, very sad situation with some powerful tornadoes down south. So this is why it's important for us to plan ahead of time, to know our tornado safe spot, because tornadoes can happen. Now, they're definitely not as common up here as they are down south or out to the west, but tornadoes still do happen in Ohio and Indiana. So I'm excited to see all your comments coming on through. A lot of folks getting it correct. Yes, tornadoes do happen out west to the south. In fact, you probably heard the name Tornado Alley. And, you know, if you've ever watched Wizard of Oz out in Kansas, yeah, tornadoes, there is some truth to that. There's a lot more tornadoes out in the Great Plains, down to the south. Tornadoes, though, still do happen here in Ohio and Michigan. So just to give you some numbers, and maybe if you're doing some homeschool lessons or if you've got a pen and paper handy, jot these down because it's kind of interesting to know. So in the United States, 1,200 tornadoes per year. That sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But in Ohio and Michigan, much less than that. So for everyone who said, well, tornadoes do happen up here, but not as common as they are out to the west and to the south, you're definitely right. Of those 1,200 tornadoes per year, only 19 per year on average happen in Ohio, and 15 a year happen in Michigan. So that's a pretty small number compared to, over 1,000 per year. Did those numbers surprise anyone? I'm not surprised, to be honest, because in my time forecasting the weather up here, we do have tornado warnings. We certainly do have some reported tornadoes, but if you are maybe scared of tornadoes, if you do have some fears of tornadoes and tornado warnings, I totally understand that, but hopefully this sort of gives you a little bit of peace of mind in knowing tornadoes just aren't as common around here. But just because they're not so common doesn't mean we can just ignore them and not prepare for them. That's why we need to know our tornado safe spots, and that's why we started off the Weather Hangout with that, because I think that's really important to know where your tornado safe spot is. So we got lots of comments coming on through. We're going to segue into our next topic, which is how fast are tornadoes, how big are tornadoes, because I know that's a question that a lot of folks have. So I'm going to get back to the tornado machine here. If not just for my own entertainment, I really like showing off the tornado machine, and I know a lot of kids like it too. So when I showed this at first, we were getting some comments come through as to what color you wanted to see. It's kind of a noisy little machine because it's actually water that's spinning around, so I hope that it isn't interfering with the audio in any way. But if you do have any colors on the tornado machine that you want to see, let me know. Right now we got a bluish kind of purple up there, but I hope this kind of demonstrates visually how a tornado operates. So our next topic of discussion is going to be how big are tornadoes, how fast are tornadoes, sort of some of the specs and fun tidbits that you might not know about tornadoes otherwise. So Katarina says green. We will switch it over to green. Did you know, Katarina, green is actually the color of the screen or the wall behind us when we're doing the weather in the studio. So I'm sure you heard the word green screen at some point or another. But basically, when we're showing our weather maps in the TV studio, it's actually a green wall behind us. It's not a map, so it's kind of a green color, just like this tornado is. Hopefully you can see the color there demonstrating. So Dawn says tornadoes can be from F1 to F5. You are correct, Dawn. We're going to talk about the scale and how strong tornadoes can be in just a second. But of course, I wanted to show the tornado machine because that's part of the experience. When this whole situation is over and we can get back to going to school like normal and congregating in groups, I really love doing these elementary school visits because I can actually show the tornado machine hands-on. Now, I know this is kind of the second best thing, showing it over YouTube here, so hopefully this at least sort of helps visually demonstrate the tornado. And I'm kind of going to explain exactly how tornadoes form in just a second using that as a demonstration, but I want to turn the little tornado machine off here because I don't want to spill it on my laptop. I think I mentioned that sooner. There was one time where I had a little oopsie, and it may have spilled on my computer. So never going to make that mistake again, but we're going to talk about how big are tornadoes, how fast are tornadoes. So some of you may have left your guesses in the comments on the sidebar. I'm reading through all of your comments. Tara, we are going to talk about how tornadoes form in just a bit, but we want to talk about tornado size because, to be honest, this is something that even surprised me a little bit when I was researching for this. And it was something that it's something that you don't really think about that much. How big is a tornado? How fast is a tornado? And sort of some of the specs onto the size of the tornadoes and the intensity. So here's sort of an average of some of the tornadoes. So a normal tornado generally lasts about 5 miles. So some of you that may be into hiking or walking or running, can you imagine running 5 miles or walking 5 miles? That's a pretty far way to run or walk or hike or ride your bike. Now think about some tornadoes going 5 miles, and that's only about average. There's some tornadoes that go way longer than that. There's some tornadoes that don't even come close to that. Now this is just sort of an average number. Is anyone surprised by that? 5 miles long? That seems like a long ways to go. And so the normal size of a tornado, well, about 500 feet wide. That obviously can depend on a lot. There's tiny little tornadoes that we call rope tornadoes, and then of course there's big powerful tornadoes that are much wider than 500 feet. So is anyone surprised by these numbers? The normal size of a tornado, the normal path length? It's something that you don't necessarily think about every day, but if it's definitely something to think about. So if you've got kids tuning in here on YouTube, maybe jot down some of these numbers. I'm not going to give you a pop quiz or anything like that, so don't worry about that. This is sort of the fun school edition. We don't do the quizzes and tests, none of that stuff, just the learning, the science, and the hands-on demonstration. So I'm going to leave this slide up. I want to answer as many of your comments as possible. This is a good problem to have. We've got more comments coming in than I can handle at this time. So I'm just going to read through some of your comments and answer them as best as possible. So Kaylin says, how similar are tornadoes to hurricanes? Oh, that's a good question, Kaylin, and that's actually a good idea. Maybe we will focus on hurricanes in one of our weather hangouts. Tornadoes and hurricanes form very differently. Hurricanes generally form over water and they can move over land. Tornadoes form over land, and also just the mechanisms by which they form are a little bit different. Hurricanes, the swirling is generally way up in the sky. Tornadoes can actually come down and touch the ground. So they sort of have different ways to form, different impacts, all sorts of things. So we got a question. Connor is very surprised. Connor, I'm kind of surprised too. That seems awfully long and awfully wide for a tornado, but keep in mind, Connor, these are just the averages. Some tornadoes can be bigger than this, some tornadoes can be longer than this. Kind of just depends on where exactly you are and how intense the tornado is. So I'm going to get into the next slide, how fast tornadoes are and how big tornadoes are. So we talked about the averages. Now, the smallest tornadoes, well, there's been tornadoes that are less than 10 feet. So 10 feet, that's about the height of a basketball hoop. Well, it is exactly the height of a basketball hoop, unless you got it set to 7 feet, which I tend to do so I can dunk easier, but 10 feet, the height of a basketball hoop. It's about 1.5 times the length of a person. It's not that big for a tornado. So does that surprise anyone? Smallest tornado being around 10 feet? Seems awfully small, but keep in mind that's on the lower end of the scale. Average tornadoes closer to 500 feet, and the biggest tornadoes, that number staggers me. Is anyone surprised by this? I would say raise your hand, but comment if you're a little surprised by that. The biggest tornadoes, almost 3 miles wide. Isn't that crazy? 3 miles wide for a tornado, which is why it's so important to know your tornado safe spot, to plan ahead, to take precautions, and just stay weather ready, stay weather informed, because some tornadoes can be very big, very damaging, and very powerful. So these are sort of the extremes from the smallest to the biggest end of the spectrum. I'm kind of surprised by this, and I'm sure some of you might be too. So I'm going to read through a few more of your comments. Jaden has a question. Is a dust devil and a tornado the same thing? That's a really good question, Jaden. So they do kind of form similarly with spinning air in that sort of cyclonic rotation pattern. So dust devils are a little bit smaller, they're a little bit less intense. Dust devils are sort of like mini tornadoes that sort of spin around dust and particles, and they both sort of do have similar mechanisms of formation, but I'd say the biggest difference between a dust devil and a tornado is the dust devil is forming right at the ground level, but tornadoes actually form up in the clouds and they work their way on down. So a lot of folks were asking about how tornadoes form, and I think this is another good opportunity to bring out the handy dandy tornado machine. One of the things you'll notice with this tornado machine is it starts from the top and works its way down. You can think of this top section as being the clouds way up high, and as it forms, it works its way down. So that question about dust devils, well, most dust devils are at the ground level, whereas tornadoes, they start off in the clouds, they start forming funnels, and I'm going to turn this on again. I don't know if you can see it actually forming, but it starts off in the clouds and then is going to gradually work its way on down to the ground. So you will notice that it sort of starts off calm, goes from the top to the bottom. So some of you may have heard of something called a funnel cloud. Basically, a funnel cloud is a precursor. It's sort of the starting point of a tornado. So when that rotation starts up in the clouds, it starts off with a little funnel, and then it comes down to the ground. When we talk about dust devils, those are usually just very short-lived little spin-ups at the ground level, but tornadoes, we start off with a funnel. You can see the funnel right there, and then it comes down to the ground. So sort of a process between, well, a rotating thunderstorm to a funnel cloud, and then eventually to a tornado. So hopefully that little demonstration helped. I'm going to read through a few more of your comments. So Paul says wide, 10 feet wide. You know, Paul, 10 feet's actually on the small scale of tornadoes. Some of them, it's crazy, but some tornadoes can get several miles wide, with the average one being closer to around 500 feet. So I'm a little bit surprised by that. I think it's an interesting fact to know, and it can definitely illustrate just how powerful some tornadoes can be. Melissa, glad you like the little tornado machine. I think it's pretty cool too. You don't have to be a kid to enjoy the tornado machine. You know, it's definitely something that, it's a good nightlight to have. You know, normal people have little plug-in nightlights. Meteorologists are not normal people. We have tornado machines as nightlights. Not really, but I think it's cool to have on repeat in my apartment sometimes. And definitely, once this is all over and we're going back to school in person, I'd love to bring in the tornado machine and demonstrate it to some classes with our school science talks. All right, let's check out a few of your comments. Is a cyclone the same as a tornado? Joey, the term cyclone gets thrown around quite a bit. The rotation, that spinning in a tornado, it is what we would consider a cyclone, but cyclones, that word is also used to describe hurricanes and any type of rotation. So usually when we talk about the word cyclone, I know it gets thrown around quite a bit, but generally we're referring to rotating, spinning air, kind of like that, which would form a tornado. So how big are tornadoes? Hopefully those stats are interesting. So how fast are tornadoes? This is our next topic of discussion. Anyone know how fast a tornado might be, or what the strongest tornado is? That's a good question. What do you think the fastest tornado on record is? So a lot of you might be familiar with the scale of EF0, EF1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Basically how we rank tornadoes from the weakest and the slowest to the fastest, strongest tornadoes. I'd be interested to know, what do you think the fastest tornado is? That'd be a good one for the kids to guess. What do you think the fastest tornado on record is? Now, if you think about different comparisons, so let's just say you're driving a car. Cars go about 60 miles an hour. Anyone remember on Monday how gusty it was? We had a first alert day on Monday for those strong winds. So on Monday, we got about 50 mile an hour winds here in Toledo. And if you think about these tornadoes, 65 to 200 plus miles per hour. So we got 50 mile an hour winds on Monday. Imagine these tornadoes with rotation and wind speeds over 200 miles per hour. So if you have, can you pick things up and throw the, so I don't know if Kaylin was asking me to demonstrate tornado damage with my little tornado machine. I don't want to damage any of my apartment or my electronic equipment with that tornado machine. We'll get back to the tornado demonstration in just a bit, but I'm going to look through a few of your comments. What do you think the fastest tornado on record is? So we got a question saying 310 miles an hour. That is very, very close. Joey says 500 miles an hour. You know, Joey, that's a good guess. It's a little bit too strong. Rebecca says 360 miles an hour. Rebecca, did you Google that? You got it right. Rebecca got it right. 360 miles an hour. Lots of good guesses here as far as the strongest tornado on record. So an EF5 tornado, That is the highest category of tornado. It's the strongest tornado in the category system, from an F0 to an F5. And think about it, 200 is what's required to be an EF5, 360 is the strongest tornado on record. So think about how strong that might be. So did anyone see how windy it was on Monday? Comment below, do you remember how windy it was? It was pretty gusty on Monday. You know, the trees were blowing around. There was even some outdoor objects that were sort of blowing in the wind. It was one of those days where we recommended take in your patio furniture, take in your decorations, and we only got 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts on Monday. Now just think about this. 65 is the lowest end tornado, and we've seen tornadoes that have gotten up to over 300 miles an hour. So compare 300 to, let's say, 50 on Monday. Now, that's a pretty big difference if you ask me. So thanks for all your comments on the strongest tornadoes. I think that's very interesting that a tornado has been recorded over 300 miles an hour. Now, those are very, very, very rare. Even an EF5 tornado, you know, we might only get one EF5 per year. Sometimes we don't even get any EF5s per year. And they are very rare, especially in Ohio, Michigan, and the Midwest. We talked a little bit about Tornado Alley a little earlier on in this weather hangout, where tornadoes are a little more common. So for us to get an F5 or an F4 in Toledo or in Northwest Ohio, very, very rare. It's still something you want to take precautions for. It's something you want to know your tornado safe spot. But I would not worry too much about any of these stronger tornadoes here. Those generally happen down south and to the southwest. So very interesting to sort of see the difference between an EF0 and an EF5, and even that strongest tornado on record, crazy, over 300 miles an hour. That's sort of an interesting statistic. Hopefully you can maybe take notes, write some of those numbers down. Yeah, we got some comments coming in on Monday's wind, 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. So question coming in, what does EF stand for? That's a really good question. So the scale that measures tornadoes is called the Enhanced Fujita Scale, EF, basically named after the scientist and the researcher who came up with the scale, named Dr. Fujita. So EF stands for Enhanced Fujita. So originally the scale was just an F0 to an F5, and then the E was added, the enhanced scale, basically to broaden the scale a little bit and redefine some of those numbers. So EF stands for Enhanced Fujita, basically named after a scientist and atmospheric researcher who devised the scale to begin with. So quite a few of you were asking about that. EF, named after a very famous meteorologist. Hope that helps. So that's how fast tornadoes are. I want to get back to the tornado safe spot one more time for those of you that might just be tuning in. So this is what we started the episode on. Where is your tornado safe spot? This is kind of what I want to end the episode on as well, just because it's so important. So throughout this weather hangout, we talked about how fast tornadoes are, how big tornadoes are, how long tornadoes are. And knowing some of those numbers, I think it's even more important to help know your tornado safe spot. So leave your comments down below. Do you know your tornado safe spot? Especially for those kids tuning in. Thank you again for joining us for this Weather Hangout Kids Edition. I'd like to know that you know where your tornado safe spot is. I know where my tornado safe spot is. First and foremost, the basement. If you don't have a basement, the bathroom is a good spot to be. Generally just anywhere away from windows. I've even talked about how closets can be a good spot to be because there's no windows in a closet, and usually they're sort of more towards the interior of your home. So I'm glad that you know where your tornado safe spot is. Once this YouTube video is done, maybe take the kids on a run through so they know where to go during a tornado warning. You know, during a tornado warning, during any sort of severe weather, we will send a push alert to your phone through that First Alert Weather app. We'll let you know when the weather's bad. We'll let you know when you need to take shelter. So we'll keep you safe. We'll keep you informed. We'll keep you updated. But when we do tell you to take shelter, we're being serious. We mean business. It is an important thing to do. Go to your tornado safe spot, take shelter, get away from doors and windows, get to the lowest level of your home possible. So I want to end with that tornado safe spot diagram. I'm going to read through a few more of your comments before we call it quits. We've been live for almost 30 minutes. Thank you so much for joining us. Really makes my day to see all the comments coming through on our weather hangout. Yeah, Catarina basement is a great spot to go. We started and ended this weather hangout with our tornado safe spot. Definitely a good thing to know. Let's see. Yeah, Ian says, I just tracked the tornadoes over the weekend in Mississippi. Yeah, Ian, as a meteorologist, it was very sad to see those powerful tornadoes down south over the weekend. But thank you very much to all the meteorologists, to the National Weather Service, who does such great work keeping us all safe and informed. Of course, the First Alert Weather Team, myself, along with the rest of us, Chris, Ryan, Robert, and Kelly, will keep you safe and informed during severe weather. Hopefully we don't have to deal with any bad severe weather for the foreseeable future, but it's something we are always on high alert for, and something we always want to keep you safe for. Let's see, so Caitlin says, does it just go up to EF5? Yeah, Caitlin, we go from EF0, which is the lowest category, of about 65 miles an hour, to EF5, which would be over 200 miles an hour. So that's the scale, EF0 to EF5. Let's see, a few more of your comments. So Jenny says, are sandstorms tornadoes? No, Jenny. You know, we talked about dust devils a little earlier on in the live discussion. Sandstorms are something a little bit different. Thankfully, we don't have too much dry weather or sand around here to blow around. Generally, sandstorms are something that occur in desert areas where there's drought, there's not much rain, there's a lot of sand and not much moisture in the air. Here in the Midwest, we have a lot of rain, a lot of moisture. The ground here is a little more muddy than sandy, so not really the same thing, but that's a good question. Thank you so much for asking. Melissa, bye. Hope you have a good rest of your week as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate that as well. Okay, Jennifer, that's a really good question. Where would we go for a tornado if we're at work? So Jennifer, that's something you're going to want to talk to your boss about, talk to your employer. I think most workplaces do have a tornado emergency plan in place. There are good spots to go. If your office or workplace does have a basement, that's a great spot to go. If not, maybe go in sort of an inside hallway away from windows and doors. Whatever the lowest level is, you want to get away from windows and you want to go as far down as possible. But it kind of can fluctuate depending on where exactly you work. But I do think that most schools, most workplaces, most employers do have a tornado plan in place. So talk to your boss about that. I can kind of give you general guidelines, but it's something that every workplace is going to have set up individually. And for those kids that might be tuning in, I'm sure you've done tornado drills at your school. I remember way back when I was in Sylvania schools, from Central Elementary all the way through Southview High School, we did tornado drills where we would always get in the hallway away from windows. We would put books over our heads, basically just doing anything possible to prevent that tornado debris and to reduce our risk and keep us safe. So yeah, talk to your boss, talk to your school about where the tornado place is to be, but really it's important to plan for your tornado safe spot at home. Thanks everyone for joining us. A few more questions before we call it off for this weather hangout. Are water spouts tornadoes? That's a good question. They are very similar. They both involve rotating, spinning air, and the tornado chamber, the little tornado machine that I showed just a second ago, this one's actually made out of water, whereas real tornadoes are carrying debris and dust and dirt. So this one would be more semblant of a water spout, and water spouts, yeah, kind of like tornadoes, but they can actually form over lakes and water. So the mechanism by how they form, very similar. We do sometimes see water spouts over Lake Erie. A lot of times what happens with water spouts is after a very strong cold front comes through, we get these little things called cold air funnels. Sometimes you may see those on sort of chilly days where you wouldn't suspect severe weather. We get these cold air funnels over Lake Erie. So kind of interesting to think about. And thank you so much for all your comments coming on through. So appreciate you joining in on the Weather Hangout. We are going to call it a day for this one. Tune in next Thursday at 11 a.m. We'll continue to keep you safe, keep you updated, and hopefully bring some fun weather knowledge your way. The goal for this one wasn't to scare you, wasn't to make light of any severe weather, but kind of to find that balance between having a respect for the power of Mother Nature, being prepared, planning ahead, but also sort of appreciating the science behind the weather. So that's kind of my attitudes toward tornadoes and severe weather. Even though the meteorologist in me, I'm fascinated by them. I think all the stats and the facts are interesting. I do have my utmost respect for how powerful and how strong they can be, and I hope this sort of helped you plan and prepare ahead for them. Definitely tune in next Thursday at 11 a.m. In the meantime, no severe weather expected for us, just some snow. So yeah, hopefully we can make it through the snow tomorrow. Have fun with that, build a snowman, because after that, back to spring weather and spring warmth next week. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day, and have a great weekend. Take care.